This is English Literature Wave. I am Prof.L.B. Gayakawad. Today we are discussing on the directive function of language. What is the directive function of language? That is the main focus of today's lecture. Every universal language, it means that there are the languages and various peoples are there, and so the languages are various, and that is called universal language. So every universal language does the function of direction to man. What is the point here? Every universal language, it is very clear that the language is universal. Universal means it is of the universal, means it is of the earth, it is of the universe, it is of the man on the earth. So every language is universal, and this universal language does the function of direction to person. It is very clear that on this universe, on this earth, people are residing or people are living their lives. And that's why the people want some direction, persons want some direction, and that's why for this direction one man comes before and he directs the second man. That is the reality, and that is the function of the language, which is called the directive function. So every universal language does the function of direction or direction to man. That is the first point. The second point is that it means it shows direction to man. It means that the language shows direction to man. Direction to man. Direction means what? The person wants some guidance. Without guidance, man cannot have his business, or man cannot do or can't do his any matter. Every matter is done with the help of the language, and that's why man wants the direction. It means the language shows direction to man in the problems, which problems are faced by man. It means that there are many problems before persons, and in those problems the language is there, and language helps man to solve his problems. How are these problems solved by persons? These problems are solved by persons, means the persons help each other, and they help each other with the help of the language. Means one person directs with the help of the language to other person, and the other person listens to the first person with the help of the language. And that's why it is very clear that the language shows direction to man in the problems which man sees, looks, or which man experiences or faces in his life. It has the direction for man. What is the point here? The language has directed persons. It is the history of language that this language has directed persons, because there are many books. In those books also the writers have directed persons. There are many scientific books, there are many religious books, there are many classical books. On the basis of these all books, the man has directed man. It means that the man has used the language, and with the help of that language, the person has directed the second person. And so it is said that this language has directed man in all the branches of life. It means that there are many branches for man, and in all these branches this language has come before, and this language has helped person to direct other person. And that's why we can say here, it has directed man in all the branches of life. We will learn this in detail with the help of the following examples. Now we will take one example, and with the example we will detail understand the directive function of the language. For example, there is a man. What is the point? There is a man and he wants to go to the particular place, and he needs the guidance from you. You use the directive function of the language. You do use the language here to direct him about the place. You say, where do you want to go? The man says he is going to the temple. So you say, go this way and then turn to the railway station, and then the temple is there under the pimple tree. Now, when we see this example, then we understand that there are the two persons. One person has the need of the direction because that person does not know the temple. Because that person wants the temple. That person is going to the temple. That person is a religious person, and he wants to go to the temple, but he has no address, or he doesn't know the address of that temple. That's why he is asking to a second person, and that second person is talking with him, and in this dialogue there is the discussion of the two persons, and these two persons are discussing with each other with the help of the language, and one person is guiding here the second person, and that second person is listening carefully, and he is going to his temple because he wants the guidance. It means that he wants the direction, because some person should direct him about where the temple is. Otherwise, that person cannot go to the temple and he cannot complete his purpose. And that's why his purpose will be lost. And that's why the person wants the guidance from the first person, and that's why the first person asks him, where do you want to go? Where are you going? That man says, oh, I am going to the temple. So the first man says, okay, you go to the temple, but this way is like this. And how he says? He says, go this way and then turn to the railway station, and the temple is under the pimple tree. So exactly the first person has said to the second person about the address of the temple only because of the direction, and that direction has happened only because of the language, So it is very clear that the language directs person. That is the basic function of the language. And so here we say that we prove that the language has the directive function, and the language directs man with the help of it, and man learns about his life. And in this way we can say that the language is very basic, and it has the basic functions of directiveness or the direction. This discussion, now we saw the discussion between the two persons, that the person wants to go to the temple and the second person has directed him. He has shown him the way to go to the temple, and that man has gone to the temple under the pimple tree, and he has worshipped his God, and he has done his activity, or he has completed his activity. So this discussion between you, means between the first person and the second person, this discussion between you and the person, means the person who was asking you about the way, about the address of the temple. So this discussion between you and the person shows that you directed the person, and the person went to the temple as per your direction. What is the conclusion here? The conclusion is that with the help of the language you directed that person. That person has understood, that person has taken into consideration, that person has carefully listened to you, and that person has gone to the temple and he has completed his worshipping there, or he has taken the darshan, I will say, or he has worshipped the God, I will say there, and that man has completed his activity. And the first person, means you, have completed your activity of direction. So this is called the directive function of the language. The teacher directs his students with simple sentences and interrogative questions. Now remember, we have taken the example of the teacher and student, that there is one teacher and there is one student. Thus, the teacher directs his students with the help of the simple sentences and with the help of the interrogative sentences. Means he asks some questions and he talks in simple sentences. He takes an oral and written feedback with the help of the language. That teacher takes the oral feedback as well as the written feedback from his students, and these students give that feedback with the help of the language. Means that teacher has directed the students to give the feedback, and that feedback has come from the students only because of the direction done by the teacher, and that is happened only because of the directive function of language, and this process has been completed. Then we can direct a person with giving commands. So we can give the commands to the person and we can guide that person. Means how can we guide the person? We can guide the person by giving the commands, making request, giving request, making request, and asking questions. Means when we ask questions, when we request, or when we give the commands, in this way we can direct the person with the help of the directive function of the language. Here the person guides the person through the directive function. What is here? One person guides the second person, one teacher guides the student. That happens only because of the directive function of the language. There are some directive questions which are difficult to answer. It is the explanation that there are some directive functions which are very difficult to answer. Means it is very possible that there may be, or there are, or there will be some questions, directive questions, which will be very difficult to answer. That is the easy thing, because in life nothing is possible. So nothing is simple, and that's why there are some directive functions which are difficult to answer. Means when some person is asking you about the direction, you cannot give that person the particular guidance, because those questions are very difficult. Because when some persons will ask you about the address, you cannot give them the address. Why? Because you do not know that address. So some directive functions or some directive questions are difficult to answer. Hence we cannot say it as true or false. So such a discussion or such a directive function cannot be true or cannot be false. Means sometimes exactly if we know, we tell that person the exact address, so that is true. But sometimes we do not know, that's why we cannot say the exact address to that person, that's why it is false. So it is said that we cannot say it is as true or as false. For example, if we go into the metropolitan cities and when we ask some person about the address, that person is very naughty. He doesn't tell us exactly the address, but he directs us to go to the different way, and we are confused there and we lose our work there. This happens in the metropolitan cities. So this direction is false. So the direction may be false or direction may be true. That is the point. But the commands given to the persons can be true or false. Yes, when we give the commands, when we give some directions to the person, they are always true. They are always true or they are always false. Because the teacher gives some commands, they are always true, and the teacher also talks about the commands which are always false. Means the teacher says, oh my students, these commands are false, these things are false. It means he says, the teacher says, don't go there, don't talk much in the class, don't quarrel in the class. In this way he says, means all these commands are false. Means they are true but they are false. How false? Because if the students quarrel in the class, that will be a problematic thing, and so the teacher gives some false things. Or sometimes we can give the command which can be false also, and so the commands given to the persons can be true or false. Thus this directive function helps man to direct man and get knowledge. In this way, with the help of this directive function, man gets knowledge and man gets direction. So here today we have finished our function, that is the basic function of language, and that basic function of language is the directive function. So again, in the last I will request you to like the channel, to share the channel, and to subscribe please the channel. Thank you very much.